Welcome back. As you know, in the course of this conference, this is focused around customer-facing applications. So we'll go through each one of these applications in great detail. So what I'm going to do is talk about the suite, the CRM suite, give you a little bit of the history of the motivation behind it and where we are with it and the journey we've taken with it. So this is the first time. I won't go deep into any product, but I will just go through the suite itself. Okay, so the journey so far, that's what I'm going to describe. So let's start with how customer-facing software actually evolved. When I say customer-facing, it's the software that companies use to manage the relationship with their customers. So if you go back in the history of this, a lot of it started with the sales part. Fundamentally, as we all know and recognize, customers and the revenue from them is the fundamental driver of any business. So it is but natural to think that when automation came in through software, one of the first things that would get automated would be a sales process. So if you look at historically how this evolved, it was actually a subset of CRM. It was called Salesforce automation. And it was paired up with how you work with the customer once you sign them up. So this was, in fact, in the early days, this used to be call center software, and that evolved into customer help desks. So together, that actually evolved into what we call CRM today. But then things evolved, right? New channels came up, new technologies came up, and the way people interacted with customers continued to grow. So the next big thing that happened was email. People started making connections, email, they started using email as a vehicle for multiple customer interactions, from the prospecting stage to the sales process to even support and other things. So email came in, and one of the first things that came out of email in a mass way was to use it for prospecting and to use it to reach out to customers before you brought them into the sales process. So that was the next thing that came about. Another example of something that evolved was once email came in, now businesses moved on the web. Once that happened, a lot of people who visited you for the first time learned about you on the web. So you wanted to know about them, you wanted to respond to them. So once again, the web itself became a new vehicle, and you had to do the prospecting, the support, the sales process, again through the web. So you had analytics and a bunch of things that came up that was upstream of the sales process. Moving on to the other side. Once you had a customer and you brought them on board, you've now put in place a support system. You, as a supplier to your customer, want to manage the customer. The big value that you're going to create now is retention, is loyalty. So things came up in technology that allowed you to do that. Many of your businesses don't end with sales. They end with a service component. They end with a longer-term contractual agreement with your customer that you need to fulfill. So program management came out of the back of that, and that was again tied to a sales process because it had to be facilitated. It was a thing that followed from a sales process. A couple of more things. Retention. The big aspect of any business is retention and loyalty. As we all know, especially in the world of subscriptions, keeping customers as long as you can, or retaining your customers, is the biggest way you can actually grow your business, which is how we do it, by the way, as well. So tracking your customers, knowing how they respond to you, so that gave rise to technology in the area of surveys. New channel, another new vehicle comes up, the internet morphs into social, and that becomes another vehicle for you to connect with your customers through the entire stage of progression from prospecting to support. And so new technology comes in over there again in the area of marketing. So if you look at this, I could keep go on and on, but this gives you a flavor of how this has evolved. So if you look at the stuff on the left of the screen, that resolves into things that you engage with your customer early in the cycle, in the prospecting phase, in the marketing phase. And things on the right line up with things you do once you've actually sold the customer. So now sales becomes a central process, and it's buttressed by these two things on either side that provides the total customer experience through the life cycle of the customer. Prospecting, acquisition, support, retention, right? So this was the evolution of technology. So what happened to CRM software? Initially, it started absorbing all these components. Support components came into it, marketing components came into it, and so on. And soon it became fairly bloated. The other thing that happened is the market proliferated. And so a lot of companies got into the space. So many of you know multiple companies in each of these buckets. So let me talk about that a little bit. So as the customer's needs evolved, meaning you as the customer who's serving their customers, as their need evolved, you had a massive proliferation of software. So in each of these categories. And so you had, as if you were to serve your customer across that lifestyle, across that life cycle or spectrum of needs, you would have to evaluate a number of technologies. Here's a screen that gives you some examples. So these are examples, all good companies, and you'll recognize many of them. Maybe some of you use some of them. So this is in the area of marketing, social, CRM, so on. I haven't put ourselves there because the rest of the conference is about us. So those are some examples. So if you think this is complicated to make a decision around this, I'm going to share with you this slide. If you can actually read this, you should probably be a night flyer or something, because it's intended to be a parody. I don't expect you to read it. But this is a slide from an advisory company that talks about the number of companies in the marketing space. 5,000 companies in the marketing space. So if you can actually even understand a fraction of this, that's a big thing. So I couldn't find Zoho here, so we took a sample of this and sent it for DNA testing to find out if we actually on this chart. Okay, so that's the number of companies. So what does this all lead to? What we wind up doing is we wind up failing the customer, because we've got all these collectively as a market, because we've got all this proliferation of technologies, ton of choice, difficult to understand what makes sense. Now all of these applications need to integrate with other applications so you can share information or be able to connect with the customer, the same customer, in different aspects of their journey with you. User interfaces, user experiences, training costs, the things that you need to do in your company when you deploy all this stuff is all your users have to get trained in the different software, and that results in learning curves, loss of productivity. So that's what happens again. Fundamentally, the software was created, here's the irony, right? All the software was created to automate these processes, and it winds up creating a loss of productivity because you simply have to go through all this pain to figure out how to use it. If you take the administration point of view, how do I administer all this? You see a bunch of other things. You have to deploy all this stuff, you have to administer it, you have to make sure the right people have right access to the right stuff, and you have to know how to do this across all of these apps. And of course, needless to say, as you start acquiring all these suites, you're going to pay more and more money. Bad idea. It's not the right solution for the customer. So that's where we came from, and Sridhar alluded to this when about 6 years ago, he said we started thinking about suites. So the first suite we thought about was Zoho, was CRM Plus. So our response was to come up with Zoho CRM Plus, which we put out about 2.5 years ago. And this brought together these three broad customer engagement platforms. Think of it as when you're in the life cycle of the customer. So we introduced about 9 different products, many of which you will learn about today. So what did we try to fix over here? Some of the obvious things. We wanted all-in-one apps, so everything to do with the customer in one place. We felt that this would actually address a bigger problem for you, because you're dealing with customers across the cycle, and we want to solve that bigger problem for you rather than solve a piece of it and leave you fishing through that list of 5,000 companies to figure out what you should do next, because we're not meeting your complete need. We wanted to be able to provide visibility into the customer, contextual information. You're dealing with a customer at a certain point, you have information on the customer that allows you to make a better decision. So that was another motivation for it. So I won't go through all of them, but I think you get the idea. And fundamentally, we wanted it to be easy for you to procure this and use it. So we put it all under a single subscription. As you know, they were all separate products. We put some management around it and priced it under one subscription and made it available 2.5 years ago. So I'll spend a minute to talk about what this contextual integration means. We use this term a lot. What this really means is bringing in the relevant information in that situation to allow you to make a better decision. It's as simple as that. So you're in a sales process, what kind of information about the customer, about the company, about the sales process itself can actually allow you to make a better decision. So let me take a few of those examples to explain that. Simple one, of course, is imagine you're using, you're supporting your customer through help desk software. So you've got a ticket, you're supporting them. So your support team uses the software to handle and manage their tickets. Imagine you actually had some contextual information on the customer. The ticket that just came in was this customer that signed 500 seats, or I'm talking in the language of software for us, but for you, it is one of your valuable customers that you signed up, which is one of your top 10 deals. Wouldn't you want to have that information with you? Wouldn't you want to know that somebody from there actually made a call last week to someone in your company and this was the issue? So you want all that information. Some of it is buried in the CRM, some of it is buried maybe in your marketing software, but you want it all. The support rep should have that context so they know the kind of response that they should provide for the customer. They know the quality that customer will expect. So that's an example of the first one. So you combine desk along with CRM, and you bring that information, better decision, better use of resource. I'll pick a couple more here. So let's take the third one. So as I mentioned, when you actually close out a sales process, for many businesses, the work actually starts there. Imagine you're an engineering company and you bid for a contract and you win the contract. Your work actually starts at that point. And then you're going to put together a system that works, maybe projects that need to, and service level agreements, SLAs as they call them, so that you can monitor this process. You bring in different people in your company who are not involved in the sales process or don't know the customer. So you're getting into the area of project management. So here you have a way for us to link the sales process take all the information you gathered from the sales process, migrate it into a project management process. And that's the kind of integration you would do in that third example. Again, it allows you to make a better decision, better use of your resource, less replication and duplication of effort. One thing that works for us is an example in number 4. So we get a ticket from a customer reporting a bug with the product. And what do? We actually tie it into 2 different products. We have a bug tracker product, so it allows us to go into a bug tracking system. And the second thing is there may be a team involved in addressing that, and they are managed under a particular project. So that, again, migrates into the project management software, and we can deal with the customer. There are no hands touching that data. Last example is, this is a big one. A lot of money, Sridhar talked earlier this morning about how companies spend 50+% of their revenue. Cloud companies spend 50+% of their revenues in marketing. One of the big enigmas of marketing is knowing whether you're getting your value at all. So what value you're getting. So one simple way to do that is to connect the leads and the prospects you're getting into a marketing process and tie it up into the CRM. So you get to know, I used this kind of a channel before. I used this strategy to go market through LinkedIn and go back to the CRM and pull out the details about the consequences of the last time you did that same strategy through LinkedIn, map it up and see the effectiveness of this campaign. Or even measure that very campaign by tracking it through a sales process and using whatever metric you want. So let's say it's dollars closed. You would use that as your metric and evaluate what you did right in the beginning of the chain. So that's another example of a contextual integration. So moving on. At CRM 1, we still had many, CRM Plus, the first release, we still had many things missing. We didn't have, there were issues with the user experience. We still had people messing around with multiple apps. Hard to find things. You're still dealing with 9 or 10 apps. You can't get what you want very easily. Managing it from an administrative perspective was also an ordeal. You had to go to each of the apps to manage it, and you couldn't have a single place to see it. And the fundamental aspect of multiple apps and working through them and meant you're switching. If you wanted to get information, you switched at it. So this is what we heard from a lot of our customers. So we listened, and we went back and pulled together CRM 2.0, which we released last November, I believe. And I'm going to just give you a bird's eye view of the application so you understand what it is and how it, more than what it is today, it gives you an idea of how we're thinking about it and where we are likely to take it going forward. So a few screens I can share. So what's new with it? Watch for this when I take you to the app. You'll see the UI. There's a better way to search and find things, a unified way to set things up, ways to provision it across all the users. If you're a larger company, it's problematic when you use a number of applications to even provision them in your company and make sure everybody has the right permissions and can only see the things that they can see and so on. I'll go straight to the app so you can actually see this. So this is an example of the UI. Search. Why don't I just go to the app and then we can look at it there. Okay, so imagine you had CRM Plus and you logged into it. Don't worry about what's in the middle of the screen because that's not my focus right now. The focus is to show you the app itself. So one thing that you can see in the app is this navigation panel on the left. Okay, those are all the apps of CRM. I know it's a little bit small, but I think you can also see them on your laptops if you're hooked up with Backstage, right? So that should be clear. So on the left here is the navigation panel. That shows you all the apps in the CRM suite, which span that spectrum of three processes, three engagement stages I talked about, marketing to sales to customer care. So I'm in CRM, so that's highlighted, and whatever is the screen. So two things you should notice. I'm in the CRM app, and this menu right on the top are the modules that correspond to CRM. So those of you who use CRM can recognize it. I can see my accounts there. I can see contacts, leads, and I can go to any one of these, and it's basically what I would see in my CRM app. So whatever you have on the top here corresponds to this particular app. So let's say I switch into a different app. This is campaigns. Now you can see the menu on the top corresponds to campaigns. So what's good about this? Two things. One, it's all in one panel. I'm not switching across products. This is a big productivity issue. Second, I don't have 16 tabs open on the browser. I can just get from one thing to the other, and it just comes out on the same screen. Just deal with it, right? So that's one example of things we can do. One of the issues that we heard from customers is, how do I find stuff? You got 10 apps here, and I want stuff, and I know you have it, and I'm thankful that you've preserved it for me. I just can't get to it, right? So we put together this universal search over here. So I'll pick that out for you and show you that. So I'll type something. We always seem to use this company, Zilka. So you'll hear a lot about that today. So here's a search on this, and it searches through all of the apps for Zilka. And you can see here it is subscribers. Remember, I was on campaigns when I came in, right? So it's showing me all the search with respect to campaigns. So I could go in over here. So if you've noticed a little filter over there, and I can pick, say, CRM. And the same search has been applied to CRM. So imagine now you're searching for a particular customer, or you're searching for a contract or invoice or whatever it is. You go to one place, and you have everything about the customer, switch between apps. You know what's happening with that customer in Desk. You know what's happening with that customer in campaigns, if they've been involved in any campaigns or surveys or whatever it is, right? So this is the unified search capability. So next thing I wanted to share with you was, let's close the search out, was the ability to do things quickly. So a lot of times, you don't want to be constrained by our app design. So you come in and you want to do a few things. You want to run a campaign. So a lot of you are entrepreneurs or run companies where you have multiple hats. So you're not necessarily in a department that does only one thing, right? So you want to add a campaign and run it, or you want to add a record in CRM. So once again, today's world of multiple apps, you got to switch into all of these apps and you got to start doing it, right? So what we did is we created something here. You see this big plus over there? So right now I'm in the CRM app. So if I click this plus, it tells me all the quick things I can do. So I can add an account here, I can add a lead here, whatever I want to do with respect to the CRM. So suppose I had been in social. I'll take social as an example here. And this is my social screen, right? So those of you who use a social product will recognize the middle of the screen, which is this view of all my activity on different social channels. So if I go to the same plus sign over here, I can see the things I want to do. What do you want to do? I want to make a post, right? So quickly you define, this app lets you define the work, not use the app to decide how you should plan your work. You see the fundamental difference? That's usability. That's usability. You're not constrained by the app design. The app should work to your design. So that's an example of search. So I'll pick a couple more things here. There's a universal chat at the bottom here. This is the Click product. Here we have a chat system across all of those engagement points. So you might have a chat here with a customer. You might have a chat with somebody who is visiting your website, which is a Sales IQ chat. You might have something with one of your colleagues to service a project for the customer, all in one place. And this chat, as we talked this morning, bots will feed into this chat to allow you to query this chat and get what you want. We'll also have live feeds coming into the chat. So if you're having a conversation with a current customer on your website, it can feed back into the chat. So that's the capability on the bottom left. A couple other things. This is your user icon, and we have a notion of a user panel. So in this user panel, you manage everything you want to do. So let's say you're wearing multiple hats, as this example represents. So you may connect with customers across multiple channels. One of them is email, there's phone, and there's chat here. So I could very quickly either turn on or turn off my presence. So imagine you're serving your customer. I want to say where I am. I'm going to get off and do something. I go in and say, I'm no longer on chat. I'm offline. Someone else from your company might be online, right? So this is a way to manage not just your preferences, but to manage your presence in front of in the different channels that you're connected with. So so you can see email, phone, and chat here. A few things here. There's single place for you to find help. Couple of other things I can point out. Let's assume that you are an administrator in the system. In other words, you had exercise control over what other people can do on the system. There's a quick way to get to an admin panel. So here's a panel. And one thing really neat about this is now you have a single view of looking at what people can do. So imagine you are an administrator for your company and you want to see who's doing what. Here's a quick way to see it. These are all the people across, and across the top are the different applications. You can quickly add people here. You can see what they can do. So it gives you a single way to view the exposure to information you have, and you can change inside your company. So similarly, you can take an application view of the whole thing and see how that is being used. There's a little element here called subscription. So when you sign up, there are certain limits and capabilities in your application, resources that you can use, storage, stuff like that. So you go to one place to see where you are against all of those resources. That's the subscription panel. So I'll come back here for a minute. That's the user panel I went through. Again, let's stick with the paradigm of you being an administrator for the company. And you have setup. There's a single place here to set up in the CRM. And here you see this thing here, that's the setup. So if you go there, you can see this is the CRM setup. Many of you use CRM are familiar with this. So across the top now, all of a sudden you've seen all the apps show up on the top. So if I want to set up anything in one of the other apps, let's say I want to set up something in campaigns, this is the setup screen of campaigns. This is where we were earlier. Or if I want to set up something in projects, I set up things over here. So there's one place for you to administer it, and all the apps come in and let you do what is specific to that app. So that's the stuff on the right. A few more things, I won't get into them just yet. One thing interesting is it's all about customization and your ability to use it how you want to, right? So there are quick things you saw. You saw the universal search. You saw the quick tasks you can do. Another thing you can do here is there's a notion of favorites. So you can go here and capture all the things you normally do. Once again, freeing yourself from the confines of the applications. I just do these 6 things, bookmark them. I mean, make them your favorites. And every time, all I do is I'm going to make a post. You'd have something here. I don't think we have it in campaigns or social. You'd have, here you go. There's something that says post on Facebook. So that's one of the things I do. It's a quick link. It's a favorite. And I just go into those favorites, and those are the 6 or 7 things you do. Imagine the efficiency of that, and imagine the ability, if you're a manager, how it would take to train employees on the system. You set up that thing for them and tell them these are the things you need to do. Here's the favorites that your employee can actually modify or play with that later. But you see how it saves training costs, it saves the ability to have to navigate things and find what you want to do. It's all in one place. Last thing I'll point out here is in the bottom right, we've integrated Zia. If you can see it, that's the place where we're going cross-company and bringing all the intelligence using AI techniques at your fingertips. So you would go to Zia and ask questions now across all these apps. So you could, for instance, go there and say, what's my revenue for the last quarter? What am I doing in this quarter? Or you can go in and say, what is the status of my deal with this company? Ask a question. So it could be a text or a chat, and you could actually do that from right here. I think that gives you a flavor of what we're doing with CRM Plus. While we provide rich and deep products, we also want to create an experience that unifies across them and doesn't constrain you from doing the job the way you want to, and being able to capture your way of work into our applications.